Collapses down to a little bundle about 2 by 3 inches by 18 inches long. Everything in the exhibit collapses down. Just to give you an idea, folding canvas bucket, this one happens to be the auto bucket. If you're driving down the road and your car overheated, you'd run down to the creek, pick up some water. There's a brass screen in here to keep the minnows and the leaves out of your radiator. But ultimately, when you're done using it, it's a couple knee action hinges. It collapses flat, and then there's another hinge in it that it will collapse one more time this way. So everything in the exhibit collapses down maybe about 1/4 the size that you're seeing here. Refrigeration was also kind of a necessity on the road, especially if you're on the road, traveling with perishables, dairy goods, meat, etc. And of course, the Auto Camp had its own ice drawer, but I show a couple other types of refrigeration that motor campers used in the 20s. The basket you see there looks like an ordinary picnic basket. That is a Hawkeye insulated refrigerator basket made in Burlington, Iowa. It's lined with asbestos and tin, and then once again, no one knew the dangers of asbestos in the 20s, but ultimately it's the forerunner of today's modern cooler. The other refrigeration method is in the middle there, in the back, the Stoll auto refrigerator. And this is an evaporative refrigerator. Stoll had a patent on this design, produced in Denver, Colorado through the 20s. This is a smaller version. They also made a larger version. It would bolt right onto your running board. And I say it's an evaporative refrigerator. Inside there's a galvanized metal box. Outside is a canvas water bag. So you filled that bag with water, and as the water evaporated out of that bag, it cooled the contents of that box. The reason it's in that cage, you all know if you were a Boy Scout, the first thing you learn in Boy Scouts, don't touch the canvas tent because the water will wick through. Same thing on an evaporative refrigerator. If it touches anything, that water's just going to drain out. It's not going to evaporate slowly. So the Stoll auto refrigerators were contained in their own steel cage, if you will, once again bolted right to the running board. Interesting feature, if you want a cool water to drink, there's an outside brass spigot. You put a cup under there, turn the spigot, and you get cool drinking water right out of your auto refrigerator. Couple other pieces, like I say, the Duplex company made the folding buckets. There's also the wash basin, and even that picnic basket folds up to be a flat little 1/4 the size parcel. Lighting was also primary importance. If you were on the road, you had to set up at night or even eat or function at night. And there are a couple choices. First and foremost, the Coleman gasoline lantern was a very popular item for motor campers. If you saw my talk last night, we talked about Coleman stoves. They were making lanterns before W.C. Coleman figured out how to make stoves. And the lantern, once again, is just a font of gasoline. There's a pump that you charge the tank with air, preheat the generators, and off you get a brilliant white gas light. Now the globe on that lantern isn't glass, it is mica. And the reason being is that if you had a glass globe, it would last about 1 day on the road with all the jostling. With mica, it was still clear, but being a mineral, it's not going to break. It will bend, but ultimately it doesn't break. Another method of lighting was the Stonebridge folding lantern. And once again, just to give you an idea of how this stuff folds up, this used just a plumber's candle. It's windproof. You put a candle in there, you can use it as a lantern. When you're done, you blow out the candle, and simply with a couple reverse hinges, this thing collapses down into that sort of parcel. And you think, where did all this stuff come from? And one of the sources, especially when you look at motor camping in the 20s, one of the sources was World War I, and I carry this as a comparison. This is a Stonebridge folding candle lantern, patented in 1906. It holds the Army Surgical Corps insignia on it. And Stonebridge made these lanterns for use in the surgical tents in World War I and in the trenches. Ultimately, once again, the war ended. They took the design that they had in brass and reproduced it in either galvanized or aluminum. Much cheaper, much lighter, same design. So some of the stuff that is used by motor campers essentially started out as a war product, if you will, from World War I. Another method of food storage is the running board pantry, and that large unit there to the right is a Hemingway tour kit. And from my research, I found that this unit was only manufactured 1 year in 1927. It was assembled by a lot of other parts from other manufacturers. It's all marked Hemingway. This one happens to be new old stock. For you collectors out there, it has never been used. It has never been on a car. In fact, all the original food storage jars when I got it were still wrapped in the original corrugated cardboard. But it gives you the flatware service for 4. It has the nested aluminum cook kit, and all the way down to the porcelain cups and aluminum plates and salt and peppers that you'd find on your table. Now, entertainment for the motor camper was kind of wide and varied. And I said, well, if you're a motor camper and you didn't have a lot of money, you could look at the scenery. Had a little more money, you could take a picture with a camera. But if you had a little more money than that, you could have entertainment in the form of recorded music. And I have here a Peter Pan folding gramophone. It plays the standard 78 RPM issue record. It has a Swiss clock movement, and you simply wind it up. Make sure it's wound up. It has a speed control and an on and off. So you have music in camp. Now everyone wants to know, well, is there a volume control? Of course there is. If you stand there, it's very loud. If you stand over there, it's not as loud. Part of the theory, too, not only did things fold up, but there was always a way to maybe make something do 2 different things. And one of the best examples here, I have this stool. This was sold by the National Auto Camp Supply Company, and it's called a 4-in-1 stool. Well, I can figure out one use of it. You can sit on it, you can eat dinner. The next use is when you're done, you don't even have to get up from the table. You can simply flip it open, and you can use at least another use for it. There's 2 other uses. I can't figure those out yet. Kids love that. I make them touch it. They get freaked out. That's pretty good. And once again, like I say, the chairs, the stools, everything folds up. The campfire grid folds up. And ultimately, you know, when people hit the road, they had to be self-sufficient. They had to figure out their housing, tent trailer. They had to figure out way to prepare food, the gasoline stove or the campfire grid, way to store food, which would be the pantry or one of the refrigerator methods, and the way to have lighting. And then, like I say, beyond that, whatever entertainment you wanted to have. And keep in mind, like I say, there were 1 million automobiles on the road by the 1920s, and half of those people there were hundreds of thousands of people out motor camping. And like I say, there was a wanderlust as soon as they got the car. It wasn't like, oh, hey, you can drive to work now. It's, let's get in the car and go someplace we've never seen. And the old slogan, "See America First," was a reaction to people wanting to go to Europe because the war had been over, and they said, well, we got to go to Europe and see it. There was a whole campaign that said, "See America First," and the reason was to get people out driving across the country. National parks played very heavily into that. For a number of years, the national parks resisted letting automobiles into the national parks because they thought it would be the ruin of those parks. But when the automobiles were finally let into Yellowstone and all the other parks, they found a huge increase in attendance because no longer did people have to get on a train, take a stagecoach, get a trunk ship. They could simply throw stuff into a Model T and go out and see the national parks. So the idea of letting automobiles in there was a little detrimental to the environment, but really boosted and promoted the national park system in the 20s. And that's about it. Are there any questions?